Plymouth at 4 degrees Celsius, whilst Aberdeen sits at 7. Yes, you heard that correctly. Cornwall colder than the Scottish Highlands this Thursday morning, and that temperature inversion is just the beginning of what is shaping up to be one of the most unsettled periods we've seen this winter. Is your area about to face another deluge of rain after Storm Chandra? Right now, yellow warnings cover the southwest, with the Met Office tracking another weather system pushing up from unusual southerly origins. We've already seen significant flooding across Somerset, Devon and Cornwall over the past 48 hours, with many rivers having breached their banks. Some communities are still dealing with standing water, and unfortunately more rain is on the way. I'm going to give you exact timings for when this next band arrives in your area, specific temperature forecasts through the weekend, and most importantly, I'll explain why the models are now showing a dramatic shift toward potentially very cold conditions in early February. But I need to hear from you first. Drop your location in the comments right now, your city or county, because tomorrow I'll be doing personalized forecasts for the areas you mentioned. So let me start with the immediate picture. London, you are looking at relatively dry conditions through this morning, temperatures around 6 degrees, but by early afternoon that changes. Manchester, similar story, dry start 7 degrees, rain arriving by tea time. Birmingham, you've got until about 2 o'clock before the showers begin. Glasgow and Edinburgh, you are dealing with that cold southeasterly wind bringing cloud and scattered showers, temperatures struggling to reach 5 degrees. Belfast, rain moves in around midnight tonight, becoming persistent through the early hours. Cardiff, the rain arrives by lunchtime, turning heavier through the afternoon with 10 to 15 millimetres expected. Now here's what is particularly concerning about this system. We've got low pressure sat just west of Ireland, and this weather front is tracking northeastwards. The warning zone extends from just south of Bath, west of Portsmouth, right down through Dorset, Somerset, Cornwall and Devon. Generally, we're expecting 10 to 15 millimetres, which sounds manageable, doesn't it? But here's the problem. With an onshore breeze and the ground already saturated from Storm Chandra, we could see heavier pulses across the south. Some spots, particularly exposed coastal areas, could pick up 20 to perhaps even 25 millimetres. Let me be specific about timing. Exeter, rain arrives around 11 o'clock this morning, heaviest between 2 and 6 this afternoon. Plymouth, you are in it slightly earlier from about 10:30. Bristol, early afternoon onset around 1 o'clock. Southampton and Portsmouth, mid-afternoon. The rain then tracks northeast, reaching Wales, the Midlands and Northern Ireland by evening. Nottingham and Leicester, you are looking at rain from about 7 o'clock tonight. Liverpool and Manchester, similar timing, early evening. But wait until you see what happens overnight. By midnight, we could see heavier pulses across Northern Ireland, and this is where it gets rather serious. Over the hills, particularly County Down and County Antrim, there's a risk of 40 to 60 millimetres. That significant rainfall in a short period, causing surface water issues as we enter Friday morning. Derry, you need to be prepared for this. These are the sort of totals that cause localised flooding, even without the saturated ground we currently have. I'll come back to the weekend forecast in a moment, but first I want to address what's happening with the cold air, because this is where the models are showing something quite remarkable. As this weather front pushes across Scotland in the early hours of Friday morning, it is going to encounter the colder air that has been sitting to our northeast. We're really likely to see rain turn to snow above around 200 to 250 metres. Inverness, you could wake up to snow on the hills. Aberdeen, similar picture. The Cairngorms, obviously, proper snow. Even the southern uplands could see some wintry bits. Braemar, you are almost certainly looking at snow. The freezing level drops to around 200 to 300 metres by Friday morning. Now, I know some of you are thinking, bit of hill snow, nothing unusual for late January, and you'd be correct. But here's the thing, that very cold air is so close to us. Bitterly cold across much of Europe, absolutely frigid well to our east. We were just not quite tapping into it. Yet. And that word yet is doing a lot of work in this forecast. Let me show you what the models are currently indicating, and I should stress this is day 10 to day 15 territory, so significant uncertainty remains. But all three main operational models, the Met Office, the GFS, and the ECMWF, are now showing a substantial shift toward cold or very cold conditions as we progress into February. Not next week, probably not even the early part of the week after, but around 10 days from now, somewhere around the 7th, 8th, 9th of February, the GFS has been leading on this pattern for several days now. It shows high pressure building to our north later next week, not this weekend, but the following weekend, around day 8, day 9, day 10. That allows northeasterly or even northerly winds to develop, pulling air masses down from Scandinavia or even the Arctic. The GFS operational run Eisen-T showing anything terribly extreme, but it is showing cold, minus 10 degree isotherms getting close, northern winds pushing in properly cold air. But here's where it gets interesting. The GEM model, which only goes out to day 10, is actually very cold for that time frame. It shows this evolution happening quite quickly. Low pressure diving to our south, then high pressure builds to our north around this time next week, and we start to see northeasterly or northerly winds arriving around day 10. There's a big block towards Greenland in that scenario, and it looks properly cold, winds coming straight from Scandinavia. That would definitely be wintry weather. Mild air masses nearby would provide moisture, so we could be looking at some quite heavy snow. And then the ECMWF. The latest run is particularly striking. It shows low pressure milling around for the next several days, then easterly winds start to arrive into next week. Initially not desperately cold, -5-degree ice moves in, chilly but nothing crazy. But then, progressively, the wind veers back to northeasterly. And this is the remarkable bit. The model develops what looks like a polar low, moving in from the north, heading right toward us. You can see it in the pressure pattern, this little hook, these low pressure systems moving straight from the Arctic. That would bring very windy conditions, heavy snow, massive temperature shifts, and a massive block to the west. Now, before anyone gets too excited or too worried, the chance of it occurring exactly like that scenario is slim. These are individual model runs at long range. But what is significant is that all three main models have cold or very cold air moving in. The GEM and the ECMWF both have fairly locked in cold and snowy patterns as we progress into February. Actually, I should mention something I referenced earlier. Remember last week, the models were showing cold for this week and it didn't quite happen. So I am keeping that at the back of my mind. But there is a difference this time. The Ensemble suites are now getting involved. This is the biggest shift. The GFS Ensemble, which represents 50 different simulations, is now showing something quite striking. Around average temperatures over the next week to maybe 10 days, then around the 7th, 8th, 9th of February, we start to see a dip and some very cold ensemble members appearing. Not all of them, but lots of them. There are still some mild runs in the mix, but generally speaking, a big shift here. The dew points, which is one of the best indicators of air mass changes, drop significantly in the longer term. The ECMWF ensemble is fairly similar. Around average over the next week to 10 days, then more cold runs appear, lots of them, from around the 8th or 9th of February onwards. The operational run, that polar low scenario I mentioned, sits pretty much in the midst of the ensemble pack. That tells you the confidence has built within the ensemble output. Right, I promised I'd come back to you about comments. If you haven't already, please do drop your location below. Tomorrow, S4cast is going to dive deeper into these regional differences, and with the way this pattern is setting up, the difference between Norwich and Newcastle could be substantial when that cold air arrives. Let me bring us back to the more immediate concerns. Saturday sees low pressure sitting right across the UK. Expect showery bursts of rain, a fair amount of cloud, windy at times. Leeds and Sheffield, scattered showers, temperatures around 8 degrees. Newcastle, probably a degree colder. Brighton, showers moving through, 9 degrees. Oxford and Cambridge, 7 to 8 degrees. Dover, you are on that eastern strip where it stays chillier, around 6 degrees with that onshore breeze. Scarborough and Blackpool, around 7 degrees. Swansea and Cardiff, blustery showers, 8 to 9 degrees. Sunday starts off not too bad initially, but as we head into the afternoon, it is the 1st of February, and we start to see a stronger easterly wind developing. Monday brings that easterly wind more prominently. Norwich and the east coast generally will feel quite raw. Temperatures along the northeast coast struggling to reach 5 or 6 degrees with that wind off the North Sea. The models are showing another low approaching from the south into early next week. But a few days beyond this, around Wednesday or Thursday of next week, this is where we might start to see that pattern shift I mentioned earlier begin to materialise. The Hebrides, Orkney and Shetland would be particularly exposed if that northerly flow develops. The Scottish Highlands generally would turn very wintry. Proper Arctic air would bring frequent snow showers, possibly blizzards. Let me address the jet stream. Right now, we have this kinked pattern with low pressure systems approaching from unusual southerly directions. That is why the southwest has been hammered repeatedly. But as we move into February, if that blocking high establishes to our north, the jet stream gets pushed south and we tap into a completely different air mass, continental polar or even Arctic maritime. Areas across the Midlands and eastern England would be particularly exposed in a cold northeasterly setup. The Pennines would likely see significant snow. Lancaster and the Lake District could see heavy accumulations over the fells. Hang on, let me check the latest Met Office warnings. Yes, yellow warning for rain today across the southwest into this evening, then a separate warning for Northern Ireland from midnight tonight through to 6 o'clock tomorrow evening for that heavier rainfall. No warnings currently issued for snow, but that could change as we get closer to Friday morning. The southwest remains in the warning zone today. Take care with potential flooding given recent events. Southern England sees rain this afternoon, moving northeast through the evening. Eastern areas stay drier today, but rain arrives tonight into Friday morning. Now, there is one thing that concerns me most about the longer range setup. If we do get that blocking pattern establishing, and if we do tap into very cold air, the duration is uncertain. The GFS operational run doesn't show it lasting terribly long, maybe 4 or 5 days. But the ensembles have some members showing it persisting for over a week. That difference matters enormously. 4 days of cold is manageable. 10 days starts to cause serious infrastructure issues, particularly if we see significant snowfall. Eastern England and the East Coast would be particularly vulnerable to frequent snow showers in a northeasterly outbreak. Let me clarify something about the ECMWF polar low scenario. Polar lows are small, intense systems that form over cold polar or Arctic waters. They can be remarkably vigorous, with very strong winds, heavy snow, and rapid temperature drops. If one did track toward the UK, it would be a significant event, but they are also notoriously difficult to forecast at this range. We'll have a clearer picture tomorrow, definitely by the weekend. Currently, southern and western areas are dealing with mild and wet conditions. The east coast will stay relatively mild through the weekend, but those eastern positions would make areas vulnerable to cold later. Northern Scotland, the next few days look unsettled with showers, some wintry over the hills, but it's that longer-term picture where properly cold conditions could develop. The Cairngorms and higher ground will see snow Friday for certain. The southern uplands could see snow Friday morning as that rain moves in. Then the longer-term evolution would bring colder conditions. Right, let me bring this together. Immediate picture, unsettled through the weekend, nowhere near as bad as Storm Chandra, but still wet and rather unpleasant at times. Temperatures around average or slightly below mid to high single digits for most areas. That pattern continues into early next week with another low-pressure system approaching from the south. But then, around 10 days from now, potentially a significant pattern change. All 3 main operational models showing cold air moving in. The ensembles, particularly GFS and ECMWF, showing increased confidence in this evolution. Not guaranteed, not locked in, but definitely something to watch very carefully over the coming days. If it does materialize, we're re-looking at properly cold conditions, potentially snow for many areas, and possibly quite disruptive weather. Tomorrow's forecast will have updated model information. We'll have a better sense of whether this cold signal is strengthening or weakening. I'll be looking particularly at the ensemble spread, at whether the Met Office model is coming into line with the European solutions, and at the timing of any potential cold outbreak. Do check back because with this much uncertainty, tomorrow's information genuinely matters. And please, seriously, drop your location in the comments. Whether you are in Berwick-upon-Tweed or Bodmin, Lerwick or Land's End, Ballymena or Barnstable, I want to hear from you. Tomorrow, I'll pull together forecasts for the most requested locations, and I'll explain what these different scenarios would mean specifically for your area. Thanks so much for watching. I will be back tomorrow morning around 9:30 with the latest model runs, updated warnings if any are issued, and those personalized forecasts. Take care out there, especially if you are in the southwest dealing with this rain. Stay safe, and